All right, welcome to the Red Alert Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Chapp, along with my host, Cindy Berry, who, we haven't done a podcast in some time, Cindy. And, there's been some things that have happened. Obviously, we are in the midst of the November and December kind of crusade that, happens every year. So it is what it is. But the Red Wings have been consistent. Well, not consistent, inconsistent, to be honest. 3-2 in their last 7 games since we last talked on November the 19th. This is episode 118. We've done over 100 episodes of this. We forgot to mention when we did our 100th episode. So it is what it is.
Oh
But
man, that's like
yeah,
that's like a major oversight on our part.
well, it's not any of our fault. It's actually like Apple and then some of the other ones because they didn't really count it the right way. And then I figured out why they don't count it the right way is because for some reason the number gets skewed because they delete some podcasts after a certain amount of time. Makes sense on their end, but just it was like, man, I wish we would have got that 100th episode, kind of like a reduct. Now we are on this phone with Cindy Berry. Cindy is is a other host of this podcast, and we love to talk Detroit Red Wings hockey here on the Red Alert Podcast. And Cindy, since we last talked, there's a lot of things that you could tell about this team. They're very inconsistent. They had losses against, if you go into conjunction, they had losses against um, Boston, overtime losses against Boston and Columbus. Wins against Boston and Seattle, which the Seattle game was was on Saturday, and it was actually a really good win. They lost to New York 5-0. Nashville 6-3, which was a terrible loss, and a 6-3 loss to Tampa Bay around the Thanksgiving holiday. So no one was giving thanks for the Detroit Red Wings on Thanksgiving. But as we get into December, they start playing a little bit better. I think that game against the Kraken was really a huge game in terms of how this team was going to pretty much set themselves up for this amazing December schedule that you got, which you play in Western Canada for the next couple games, and then you play New York, you play Utah, Washington, Dallas, Carolina, Toronto, and Winnipeg. So there's some hard games coming up aside from this Western Canadian trip over in Western Canada. And it started with a good victory against Seattle. But we're going to get to why this Vancouver Canucks game tonight, which we're recording on a Monday. We usually record on the off days of a game. But today we have to kind of make what we do because we had to get an episode in. But we're not really going to talk about the Vancouver game because there's something way bigger than that. But we'll talk about that in the next segment. But Cindy, I don't know if you've been keeping up with the Joneses with this team, but since we last met 2-3-2, what have you thought about the Red Wings in the last 7 games?
Well, not as bad as it could have been, but not as good as it needs to be. How about that? They took that little stretch of losses, and we've talked, Joe, about how if you're going to lose one, don't make one turn into 3, turn into 5, and so on. They had that little losing stretch, and I give them credit for getting themselves out of it. It could have gone a lot worse, but at the same time, it cost them. It cost them in the standings, and this division is so tight that there's really not a whole lot of room for error. And it's like we've said many times, it's in, November, late November, early December through December, when this team needs to turn it around. They can't continue to nosedive at this point in the season and then have to fight an uphill battle coming back and try to, scrape their way into the playoffs. That doesn't work. They've tried that for 3 seasons now. That doesn't work. So I'm hopeful, but again, I'm not seeing the consistency. And I think what we might be talking about coming up here in the next segment may be this organization's attempt to get some consistency.
Yeah, it's very interesting because one of the things I wrote down in my notes was they're consistently inconsistent, and you think about that like, wait, that doesn't make much sense. It really doesn't make much sense, and this team doesn't really make much sense on a broader spectrum because if you think about it, like they're similar to what the Lions are this year. There's glimpses of what there's the statistics say that they're a very unlucky team and they should be better than they are. I understand that. But they're very inconsistent in the nuances of the game. They're very inconsistent in the way that they're approaching the game. And even the little things that they don't think are these big, massive things, they're coming back to haunt them. So when they make a defensive error in the O zone, it comes back to haunt them. When they make a defensive error in the defensive zone, it comes back to haunt them. Like there is some things that they need to get honed in. Where they stand in the Eastern Conference, the Atlantic Division, look at that. You got 7 teams separated by 4 points from top to bottom. And then you got the Buffalo Sabres, who are habitual losers. But that's just beside the point. And that's what I think about this team. They're consistently inconsistent. They struggle to do the little things right in order to win the hockey game. And what we are going to talk about in the next segment, which is going to be something, it's going to be a fascinating conversation because there's so many ways that you can take it. But the rumors and the chatter about Quinn Hughes potentially coming to Detroit, all this jazz, you know, I can't fault Yzerman for wanting to stick with what was going on, but I look at this team and maybe they just need a tweak here and there. Maybe, Steve Yzerman's not a dumb dude, okay? I know a lot of Red Wings fans think he's not the smartest Bob or they don't believe in what his plan is or whatever the case may be. But he sees that this is a talented team. Like they're a lot more talented than in years past, and they're doing the little things right. They're consistently inconsistent, but they're treading right in the right direction. And I can't sit here and say that if Yzerman doesn't make a trade for Quinn Hughes, or he does make a trade, that's going to be the segment next we got coming up because it's going to be a boondoggle. But when you talk about this Red Wings team, like you just think about it, like it sucks because there's games where they look really, really good, and then there's games where they look like out of place. And that whole Thanksgiving stretch from you know Thanksgiving Eve to the Friday game were just absolute disasters. And the game I have the most problem with losing is the Nashville game. The Nashville game was not a game you should lose, but they lost it. And the clear thing here is the Red Wings are going to have to make up what they do the last couple years. And the win percentage in November is 475. I think this year was a little bit better in the 500 range. But December, that's when they usually fall back apart. 390 win percentage in the last 2 years. So that's what they got to out. That's what they got to escape. And if they can do that, maybe Yzerman sees something. Maybe he makes a deal before we even get to the New Year's Eve. That would be fantastic. We'll see what happens. But there's a lot of chatter, and usually when there's a lot of chatter from the Vancouver market, we usually see something happen. But for this point, since we last met, it's just it hasn't not been a great stretch for them. But they play in Western Canada. They could really, if they win a couple more games, like if they win against Calgary, and then they win tonight in Vancouver, you go 3-0 to start the whole trip. That would be fantastic. Because I look at the next couple games that you're gonna have with the teams coming up, and you're gonna be playing Calgary and you're gonna play Edmonton, and those are good teams. So just gotta stay on the track. And then once you get past this Western Canadian road trip, you have 2 road games for the rest of the year. You're at home for the rest of the year. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 home games, 2 road games in December. So that should help out a little bit in terms of travel and everything. So that's what I think about this since we last met kind of thing.
Well, here's the thing. Even though we might not have seen all the performance that we'd like to see out of this team, the one thing I'm encouraged by is I see a higher level of competition. I see a greater compete in them than I have in the last few years. I mean, everyone from, and I think to a certain extent, this really, you got to credit these young rooks that have come in with infusing that energy and really having that compete level. They want to win. They're there to win. They didn't make it just to make it to the NHL to not start making their mark. And I think that's what they're all looking to do. And then you've got veterans like Dylan Larkin, who wants it so bad because he has spent the better part of his early career really not having a chance at postseason, except for I think it was his rookie year or second year or whatever. But other than that, since he's been captain, he hasn't been able to captain this team into the playoffs, and I think that's something he wants very, very much on his bucket list. And then you've got guys like Patrick Kane, he's just a competition machine. I mean, that's all that guy does. He's incredibly, it's just his competitive streak is extraordinary and his talent is equally extraordinary. So you've got everybody at every rung of this ladder that I see bringing another level of compete that I don't think we've seen in the past. You know, a lot of times, especially with veterans, maybe who are mid-range somewhere in their career, they kind of, they're just trying to not get hurt. I don't know if they're trying to win all the time. They're just trying to not get hurt so they can keep those checks coming in because they've got families and commitments and everything else. So, they kind of phone it in a little bit sometimes, or they might back off on some things in terms of aggressiveness that, uh, they've got other things going on. And so, but I think that for some reason, this team has got a higher level of competition, so that's good. I I feel like what excuse me, what might be happening, and we're going to talk about next, is going to be a huge indicator. I believe Steve Yzerman is waiting to see exactly what you just pointed out to everybody, Joe, and that is he wants to see how they do into December. He wants to see if they can eclipse that Achilles heel that has wrecked them every single season, and it's December. Can they do better in December, markedly better than they have done in the past? I think that is when Steve Yzerman is really going to pull the trigger and make the decision on whether he's going to commit to someone like Quinn Hughes. And if he does, that is going to speak volumes, not only to the fan base, but also to the team as well, and tell guys like Dylan Larkin, who's looking for a buy-in from the brass. He wants to know, do you believe in us or not? Are you gonna have our backs or not? Are you gonna bring something? That's why he was so disappointed that Steve didn't make any moves prior to the trade last season, because it's a matter of, it doesn't speak to them having belief in the team. And so I think that's what we're going to see. If we can see it before the new year, like you said, Joe, I think you're going to see a completely, if we think they're competitive now, I think you're going to see this team come back on steroids after the first of the year.
Yeah, here's what I think. So it's been reported by Elliotte Friedman that people don't want to talk about a Quinn Hughes trade. Elliotte thinks it's because of how big it would be. He calls it a hand grenade. They said that they have talked to New Jersey and Detroit. Said that he says he thinks there is a deal possible with Detroit. And I've listened to the podcast, 32 Thoughts podcast, and it was very interesting the way that he worded it. And that's the reason I'm kind of gonna say it like this. I think there's a deal that's imminent. And when I mean imminent, I mean like he was wording it correctly. Like this is what it could be. This could be a hand grenade. He wasn't gonna roll it into the podcast because I think a guy like Elliot Freeman, who has a lot of cachet, he's not gonna just say things before he could potentially pop off one on X or Twitter or Sportsnet. So, and it was interesting because they were talking about Rick Dawiel, who's a guy who he does stuff like in Vancouver. He said Vancouver specifically likes Marco Kasper from Detroit's prospect pool. Well, if we put it in conjunction with what Luke Stankoven got for what the what was it? The Dallas Stars traded for Mikko Rantanen, right? At the trade deadline last year. And they gave up Logan Stankoven and 2 first-round picks. Now, that's my baseline for how this trade starts. This trade could be Marco Kasper. It could be Nate Danielson. I have a hard time believing that it would be, ASP or Sandine Pellick or Simon Edmondson. That'd be hard to fathom that they would put a collection of them. But I look at this Logan Stankoven deal. and the Mikko Rantanen deal, which Dallas and Carolina executed last year. I think that is the barometer right there because, Mikko Rantanen's a hell of a player. So if he went for 2 first-round picks and a premium player, I would have to say Marco Kasper could be that premium player. And this is where you get into a little bit of semantics because people were talking about there was a fan proposal. He said Detroit gets Quinn Hughes. Edvinsson would go to Vancouver. Kasper would go to at Vancouver. Emmett Finney would go to Vancouver, and 2 firsts from 2026 to 2027. Now, here's the problem with that. And Cindy, I want your thoughts on this. That's a fan proposal. That's not real life. So when I look at this trade that potentially could happen with the Detroit Red Wings and the Vancouver Canucks, and the way Elliotte Friedman craftily worded the trade potentially going down, I think this deal is coming. I think that when he chose the words, he says he thinks there is a deal possible with Detroit. Now, I want you to hearken back to a couple years ago. He said the same thing about Mikko Rantanen being traded to Carolina. And just days later, he was traded to Carolina. And then he was traded to Dallas because he didn't want to be in Carolina. Bygones be bygones. I think Steve Yzerman looks at this as an opportunity. Not just an opportunity for him to get a premium defensive player, but if you think about it like this, Cindy, you could potentially have, for the next couple years, you could potentially have Quinn Hughes, Sider, ASP, Edvinsson, if you did it correctly. And then Albert Johansson, and then pick your last defenseman, pick your depth defenseman, whether it's Docker, Sherratt, wherever the case may be. I think this would be not just a huge move for Steve Yzerman, but one of his boldest moves yet. And I think last year when Larkin said this,
you got to come up with wins, and I think especially in March, it was hard. That we didn't do anything, and then I felt the group kind of we didn't gain any momentum from the trade deadline, and guys were kind of down about it. So it'd be nice to add something and bring a little bit of a spark on the ice and maybe a morale boost as well.
So he said that last year at the trade deadline. What morale boost, what shocking thing would it do if you said Quinn Hughes is now in your defensive lineup? Now you have a quarterback for your power play. You just hit that would be the bold move that Steve Yzerman needed to take this team to the next level. And he's always needed a bold move. But Larkin just said it right there. It's a morale booster. And we talked about before about December being this month where, usually you would say, it's a jolly world and marshmallow world and joy to the world. But, lately for the Red Wings, it's been blue, blue, blue Christmas. So it would be a great Christmas if you unwrapped the present and it was Quinn Hughes.
Oh, no doubt about it. And the thing of it is that Steve Yzerman has been looking for another marquee player.
Mm-hmm.
He's been looking for it. He tried to get a couple of them in the last 2 off seasons, and for one reason or another, it didn't work. The one time he got screwed by, I think it was it Pittsburgh who screwed him in that last year deal, or Philadelphia, the Flyers. It was one of those Pennsylvania teams. Yeah, that screwed him over. He had that deal done, and then he got screwed there, and now he's got JVR anyway. And then you had last season he was trying to get another marquee player, and ended up kind of taking his second or third choice, which didn't work out. But so, I mean, Steve has been in the market for a Quinn Hughes kind of player for a while. And the fact that he's a defenseman who can come in, he can pair him with ASP. I don't know if they're opposite. Are they left hand, right hand? I don't know if they are.
ASP is the right hand. Quinn Hughes is a left hand. So, yeah, they'd be opposite.
Perfect. That's what he's looking for then, because he knows he's going to have to replace Ben Sherratt. He knows that the Wings have got to do something about their blue line because they're not getting a goalie anytime soon, as you know. So they're going to have to do something. So the best chance he's got is to shore up the blue line, add a marquee player that's going to give a boost, if you will, like you said, to morale. Quinn Hughes is definitely, Quinn Hughes checks a lot of these boxes. He's going to add the morale. He's going to create excitement. He's going to lend to bolstering the Red Wings blue line. He's going to be a great partner to Axel Sedin Pellica, who I don't think is going anywhere. And I think
Hmm.
if you see anybody hitting the block, it's probably going to be Danielson, because Nate Danielson's been good. It's either going to be him or it's going to be Marco Kasper, or maybe it's a package deal. I don't think Steve's going to let them both go. But you never know. I mean, for a guy like Quinn Hughes, he might just do it. I've been hearing Danielson is probably on the way out more so than Casper, just because of the nature of the structure of the deal. So I would expect to see that. All this other crazy stuff you're talking about that the fans are coming up with all these three-team that, like I said, that's just not reality. I mean, those situations only happen when there's no other option. Most executives will try to take the quickest way between 2 points is a straight line, and that's usually what they're trying to do. They don't have time to screw around. They don't sit around, believe it or not, and lament these different concoction of fantasy whatever going on. That fans have time to do that. Steve Yzerman doesn't have that kind of time. He's looking for what is the quickest, most efficient way to get me to point B. And I think that it could very well be maybe a Nate Danielson for Quinn Hughes trade with possibly a pick or two, or maybe they throw in a Marco Kasper. But the thing is that one thing that Steve has this year that I don't believe he had in the past is he actually has so much talent in his prospect pool or in his young guys that he can actually afford to lose Danielson and Kasper, because Axel Sedin Pellica and Emmett Finney have stepped up so much. I mean, I don't
Yep.
think anybody had it on their bingo card that they were going to make the roster this year. Maybe ASP, maybe, but I don't think anybody saw Emmett Finney
No.
coming.
And if
So
you said that, you're a liar.
right on, exactly. And so that's what I'm saying is that, and by the way, I don't know if anyone's paying attention to the Griffins, but they are having one hell of a season. They're doing very well. A lot of standouts coming out of that, and I think there's a very good chance we could see Sebastian Cossa coming up to back up, what we've got going on in net, which is talk about consistently inconsistent. But that's
Yeah.
what you get when you get veterans. And I can say this because, Joe, we haven't talked about this dynamic in a while, but right, everybody knows I'm on the other side of that of that age range than you are, right? And I can tell you for absolutely certain that what's that song? What's that country song? You're a country fan. By the way, everyone tells you look like Luke Combs, right?
Oh yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
lot of people say, "Yep."
Right. So I know you're a country fan, but it says, I'm as good as I once was, but not as good. Whatever that song is, right? I'm as
Oh
good
yeah,
once as I ever was.
George Strait, or that was
Amen.
that's Toby Keith. Yeah,
Is it Toby Keith? Amen,
yeah.
brother. Amen to that. I can speak to that from personal experience. It's like, hey, man, you might not be able to bring it every night, but when you do, you're as good as you ever were. But that's the problem with these.
Oh my God, a Toby
I knew
Keith
you'd like
reference
that
is
one.
a Toby Keith reference on the podcast is absolutely needed, especially Toby Keith is a legend, and obviously he's resting in peace. But it's funny you say that because I think I didn't want to cut you off, but here's the thing. I don't think they have to give up just Danielson or I mean, they don't have to give up Danielson and Kasper. They can keep one of them. And if you're asking me honestly, who would I rather give up to? Give up the first round picks. Maybe Kasper. I think there's much more of a higher ceiling with Nate Danielson. But with Nate Danielson, what's interesting about Nate Danielson for the Vancouver Canucks is he could be their British Columbia guy. He's from British Columbia. So that's the interesting part about that. But the Vancouver Canucks, they're a terrible team right now. And the whole reason this has jumped off the page is they have 25 points, and that's like one of the lowest in the NHL. Even the Buffalo Sabres have more, which if the Buffalo Sabres have more points than you, we're talking about you being an absolute crappy team. So the Canucks are in an interesting standpoint, and I think the Red Wings are in a standpoint where, like you just said, they have the prospects that they didn't think they would have, which not even on the NHL level, but on the SHL level, Swedish Hockey League level, even college hockey. Max Plante is having a hell of a year at Minnesota Duluth, who's one of their prospects. So I think Yzerman's looking at it just as it is, and he's going, okay, where can I make my team better right now, but not hamper the future? And I think that's the major portion that a lot of people do not get about this.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt that Steve is looking at this from a couple of different perspectives. Not just what do we need right now to compete this season, but what is going to build into our legacy. Because I know for a fact he's all about building another dynasty. That's what Steve is looking to do. He's not looking to just make the playoffs one year or maybe give it a shot and then, we'll sit dormant for the next 5 years and rebuild again. That's not what he's looking to do. Steve is looking to build another dynasty like the one he was a part of. Make no mistake about it. And so he's choosing pieces that fit both of those and check both of those boxes. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know what he's gonna have to give up to get Quinn Hughes, but I will agree with you here. I think he's absolutely in his crosshairs. He's got him in his sights. I agree with you. There is probably a deal on the table, and I think they're very, very close, if not already have it done and just kind of waiting for the right time to let that be known for whatever reason. But whatever Steve does give up, I assure you we're going to get the better end of the deal. There hasn't been a deal he struck that we've gotten the bad end. We might have gotten a situation where it didn't work out, like Tarasenko, but he didn't get screwed on the deal. So when people want to try to be critical of Yzerman, does he make mistakes? Absolutely. Has he done some things maybe we would have done differently? Absolutely. Has he maybe not taken some chances that people think he should have or opportunities he should have taken advantage of? Absolutely. Does Steve Yzerman get screwed on a deal? Almost never.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever the deal ends up being, we're not going to be short-ended on it. Will it work out the way that it looks to be on paper? Maybe not. You don't know
No.
what the chemistry is going to be like in the room. You don't know how all that's going to shake out. But at the same time, it could be like exponentially better than anyone anticipates it to be. And I feel that they are close enough to a playoff spot that it is worth taking the risk. Whatever he needs to give up and he's comfortable giving up, I think it's worth the risk bringing Quinn Hughes.
And here is Elliotte Friedman on the podcast of the 32 Thoughts. I'll play it for you because I think it's just to get his gauge on it. It's interesting what he says. And then we'll go to another podcast where Jeff Marek says the same thing. And usually these guys are never wrong. Now, you get a lot of Vancouver people who are potentially talking about, New Jersey and all that stuff. Here's what Elliotte Friedman says. And he's the guy.
I did a podcast interview last week where I talked about Detroit. And I do believe that if Vancouver and Detroit wanted to make a deal, I do believe there is a deal to be made there. And I also think they've talked. I would.
So that's him talking about the potential deal. And then here's Jeff Marek on, the potential of a
If you're Yzerman,
Vancouver trade.
Take a real.
And I think this was a week ago, but here's what he says about this.
If you're Yzerman, do you not take a real swing at this if/when he becomes available? Family lives there, ties to the state, obviously, ties to the University of Michigan. Do you not take a real swing at Quinn Hughes?
Yeah, like Dylan Larkin's there too. I mean, There's a lot going on there. So the answer is yes. JT Compher's another one, that's there. So the answer is yeah, you do. I still think New Jersey's probably leading the pack.
We all do. Yeah, I agree. I agree with
But
that.
I would say Detroit's got to be in the mix if that's what Steve wants to do. Steve did an amazing job there, and I think he's trying to put his footprint on the Detroit Red Wings, but I think he also realizes they've developed, as you say, the green banana business. They've done a real good job getting prospects and getting prospects and getting but some of those guys have been able to take the next step and some of them haven't. And I think they probably need some help right now. And what would that do to that marketplace? It hasn't played a meaningful game since 2014, 2015, really. So almost a decade.
Yeah.
You bring in Quinn Hughes, you ignite that marketplace. And I think the Illiches have been amazing stewards of the franchise there. This would cement whatever you want to say. That would be a huge addition.
So you hear him talk about it on the podcast, and this brings up an interesting other scenario, Cindy, that we were not thinking about. There's a business side to this. There's a business side to this, and the business side, and me and you could both speak to this. There's a business side of acquiring a guy like Quinn Hughes, and this is the reason I think it weighs on Yzerman even more, because if you get a guy like Quinn Hughes, what does that do to your jersey sales? Well, people are going to go buy jerseys, number one.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
He's a jersey mover. And in the 100th year of the Detroit Red Wings, what a way to just say, Hockey Town is back right now. That's it. We're pushing the button. Let's go. Let's do this thing. And let me make my mark on the team. That's what I think Yzerman's kind of contemplating. And I think, the thing about Yzerman is interesting. Elliotte Friedman said it a little bit differently than Jeff Marek. They were hypothetically saying it. It sounded to me, I don't know if it sounded to you, Cindy, Elliotte Friedman kind of came with it like, this deal could potentially happen. Like, that's my read on it.
Oh, yeah, I think Elliotte Friedman knows this deal is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Excuse me, to be exact with you. I mean, I do. I think that he has information that other people don't have. And I think he, like you said, he's rarely wrong. And the reason he's rarely wrong, it's not that he's smarter than everybody else, but he's smart enough to know not to say anything when his reputation is on the line.
Yep.
So, right. So he's very careful and cautious when he says things, how he says it. And you spoke quite a bit earlier about how he said it and the words he chose and all that kind of thing. So I think that I think it makes a lot of sense that Steve Yzerman would have a tentative deal in place for Quinn Hughes. And I really believe he's waiting to see. He's got his finger on the trigger. He just hasn't pulled it yet.
Yeah. And I think this is a situation where the Vancouver Canucks have to come at from a different standpoint, because they are trading away they're going to really ignite their fan base in the wrong way, and the Red Wings would ignite their fan base in the right way. And a lot of people are still, especially Vancouver fans, they're hanging on to this. We're going to trade him for Nico Hischier. But if you listen to any Devils podcasters or any of those guys, they pretty much say what it is, that there's no way the Devils are going to get rid of Hischier, their captain, because they don't have as much center depth as the Detroit Red Wings. That's just the reality of the situation. So there's multiple facets to think about in this deal, if there is a potential deal for what is going to happen with this deal. Like, if it happens because there is a lot to be said with this deal if it did take place. But you said it just perfectly, Cindy. Friedman has a unique personality. And I will say this because I'll say this the right way. Friedman never speculates on a Red Wings trade. He has never speculated on a Red Wings trade. He'll bring up a theory that he has, but he will never speculate on a Red Wings trade. And there's a reason that he does it, because he knows Yzerman is unpredictable. He knows that you get nothing out of Yzerman. he's probably getting some of this information from Vancouver because they do talk. Vancouver likes to talk to the media. They like to talk to the insiders, especially Elliotte Friedman. And last year, I want to point you back to JT Miller getting traded. The first person to say that JT Miller was going to get traded to New York and go back to New York was Elliotte Friedman. So there you go. There's a little bit of connection to what Elliotte Friedman has and what he could really, he can give you a pointed view. But it seemed like in that interview, that little podcast snippet, that he really seemed like, the Red Wings could make a run at Quinn Hughes, and Quinn Hughes could be a Detroit Red Wing by the Olympic break, I think.
I think you're going to see something happen because I think Steve Yzerman sees what the rest of us see, and that is a whole lot of potential. And I don't think he's going to let that get flushed down the toilet again this year. He's not going to take another year of possibility and potential and not make the playoffs. I think he's at the point where it's kind of put up or shut up kind of a thing. And we're going to start making these serious runs into the playoffs where they're starting to talk about the Red Wings being contenders this year. This is really the first year you've heard like, oh, it looks good, we're hopeful, or we're hoping so. But now you're actually hearing people outside of the Detroit market talk about the Red Wings actually being contenders. So that's not lost on Steve Yzerman. The other thing I want to point out is that it's really interesting, and I hope I don't disappoint the fan base too much, but gang, we're members of the fan base too. We're nobody special, and I can tell you this: the organizations, the brass, they don't care what we think. They don't care what
No.
we want. They might care a little bit about what their season ticket holders want or what they would like to see or whatever. But at the end of the day, they don't care what we want. What they want is they want to ice a team that's going to cause us to watch games, buy jerseys, buy tickets, buy concessions, get us to games. That's what they want from us. So whatever it's going to take to get to that, whether that means icing a winning team, icing an entertaining team, icing a team that is a contender, whatever it is, that's what they're going to do. But in the grand scheme of things of what we want to see or what we'd like or whatever, they don't care. And it's not just here in Detroit, it's all professional sports team ownerships. It is very rare, in my experience, to come across the owner of a professional sports team, whether it's hockey or anything else, that is really in it to win it. I mean, they're in it to win it because that's where the money's at. But there are occasionally owners who will come and say, and Mr. Elliotte was one of these people. He was one of the rare breeds, and there's not a lot of them anymore. And he wanted to win to win. He wanted to win for Detroit. He wanted to win for all of the right reasons. And you just don't see that very often. But that's what made the Red Wings special at that time, is he was willing to do whatever it took because that was his motivation. Money is always great, but that wasn't his motivation for investing in Detroit and in the Red Wings the way that he did, at the core. So I feel like Steve Yzerman's going to do what's right for this team, for the legacy he wants to bring back to Detroit. I think he's going to do what is right from a business standpoint. And I think he's got the support of ownership to do it. So that's where I think we're going to end up. If we don't end up with Quinn Hughes, if Quinn Hughes ultimately decides, or they ultimately decide that he's going to end up going somewhere else, I would say Steve Yzerman will be on the lookout for somebody else. If not Quinn Hughes, it's going to be someone else that can add a real boost to this team rolling into the playoff race.
Well, here's where I come from. So here's the deal. What you said about owners not wanting, they're not in it to win it. Like, a lot of owners are in it to make a profit. That is true. Because if you have an ownership that is in it to win it, I mean, just look at the Yankees. Back in the George Steinbrenner days, they wanted to win at all costs. Now that his son has taken over, they want to win at cost, but they don't want to win at all costs. And people could use the Dodgers as an example. Dodgers have like 3 different owners, so they could spread the money out a little bit differently.
Right.
So that's a difference right there. But most of these owners, they want to win, but because that's winning is money. Because if you have a losing team, no one's coming to the games, and I hate to say it, but no one's buying your merch. And that's the biggest thing is the merchandise. And no one's watching you on TV, which is another TV contract, and that's money in the bank. The Red Wings always have the fan base that's going to stick with them no matter what. But the reality of the situation is if you did make this move, if you did, number one, you would just there would be an instant big time boost to go to the games. That's number one. That's the way you got to look at it from Chris Elliott's standpoint. Number two, it instantly would boost your team. That's number two. So right off the hop, you're getting ownership involved, you're getting the team involved, and that's 2 and 2. The third part is the most intricate part, and that's the one part that a lot of people don't really, especially fans, they don't really understand, and it's not their fault because they're not in the room. But what happens when you make the deal, and does this guy fit into your game? Like, does he fit into your team philosophy? That's a lot of it too. Like, you could just get a bunch of great players, and if they don't fit together like a puzzle, you're not going to win nothing. I mean, I think a great example of that is the Dallas Stars in Dallas. They're a great team. They have a lot of great pieces, but holy crap, man. Like, they never can win in the playoffs. And it's like, has this team not won or even gone to a Stanley Cup in the last couple of years? It does not make sense. So that's the kind of the fine line you got to go with. But I think if Yzerman's going to go and make this trade, if he's going to go make this trade, I think he's hell-bent on this player actually helping this team, putting this team in the playoffs, putting this team as a Stanley Cup contender. Because if you do get Quinn Hughes, that's an instant making your team better in the near term and in the future too. So there you go. And there's potential that, a lot of people have been talking about this on the interwebs. No insider has talked about this. But if Quinn Hughes goes to Detroit or if Quinn Hughes goes somewhere else, they think Jack Hughes would follow him in his next contract, which is in 2030, which is a long way away. But that's the puzzle pieces that could be put together as well. So Quinn Hughes coming to Detroit would be huge. There's no other way to sugarcoat it. And I don't think that Steve Yzerman would sugarcoat it either. I don't think anybody would sugarcoat it because it would be one of the biggest trades that Steve Yzerman. No, I put it back like this. It would be the biggest trade that Steve Yzerman has ever made. Period. End story. Boom. And all that morale that Larkin was talking about, we played the clip earlier. This would be a morale booster to all high hell because you got someone else's captain to come to Detroit. Hell yes. Count me in.
Yeah, I think for all of those reasons, if it's at all possible, I think it will be done. Now the question is when.
Yeah.
Because that's a huge factor. The win of it will seriously underline the impact that Quinn Hughes can have. I think the sooner the better. My guess is, though, it probably won't be till after Christmas. That's just my thought, but I could be wrong on that. I think it would be after Christmas. Would it be after New Year? I don't know. I think maybe Quinn Hughes might decide to come home for Christmas and just stay. But the more games that we can have him for, the more value there is there. Because let's face it, could you bring him in right at the trade deadline? You could, but why would you do that and waste all of this time that you could be racking up points that you're going to need coming into postseason or making a run at it? So that doesn't make any sense to me. If Steve's going to do this, sooner the better, because there's no advantage to waiting. So,
yeah, there's no advantage to waiting. And if we go back to what what happened with JT Miller getting traded, it was before I think it was um before the All-Star break. I'm trying to put a traded to New York. Let me see if it comes up. But I was harkening back to when his trade was done, and I believe it was the whole it's not giving me a good answer. I believe it was before the All-Star break. So that's kind of like where I'm looking at. You just said after Christmas. I think it will be before the Olympics. And there's a couple reasons why. The number one, I think that you want clarity, and I think here's the thing that we haven't talked about, Cindy, and this is the biggest thing to this trade. If you hold out, let's say you're Vancouver and you hold out to February, right? Do you diminish the return? Do you diminish the return of the trade?
Oh,
And then,
absolutely.
and so, like, let's say you want, let's say, well, we're going to give you Marco Kasper, we're going to give you 2 first round picks. Well, if you wait till February, maybe you only get 1 first round pick. You see what I'm trying to say? Like, I think that Vancouver has to heavily play this the right way because they are not in the position to play. They're not in the position to play hardball. They're really not. Like, if you think about it from this perspective, Quinn Hughes, he is a free agent after this year, I believe. So this guy, he has all the cards in his back pocket pretty much. And if I'm the Vancouver Canucks and I'm looking the contract up right now because I believe he is a UFA. Yeah, he'll be a UFA after the 2027-2028 season. So he's got probably 2 years left. So you get him on you get him on a 1.5 years. So for me, there's a couple things that have to come along with it. But I think that if Yzerman could swing this deal earlier than later, I think the Canucks can get more. So if the Canucks are smart, they do it now.
Well, that's it. See, it's a win-win. The sooner the better is a win-win for both. And so I think they recognize this. If I had to guess, I think Steve is slowing this down more so than Vancouver, if it's being slowed down at all. And again, it may have already really happened and we just don't know it yet because it hasn't been submitted to the league. They have 24 hours to submit to the league. So it could be that, the contracts are sitting there and they're just not signed yet, but all the terms have been already negotiated. Either way, the sooner we get Quinn Hughes, the better, because December is slipping away day by day. And as you know, and as we talked about as we started the podcast, Joe, December is the critical point that the Red Wings have to overcome this hump in their season because this is where they hit the speed bump every year. So
Mm-hmm.
they have to do something to smooth that out. Quinn Hughes could be that smoother very, very, very easily. It could take those games. They went, was it 2-3-2? It could take those 2 games that we went into overtime on, switch them to the win column.
Yeah.
And and Quinn Hughes could be the difference. So even though it may not be a massive shift, it could be a tremendous impact just by changing a couple of key outcomes, a couple of key plays, keeping the puck out of the net late in the third period or in overtime. It's that kind of stuff. And that's where Quinn Hughes excels. So why wouldn't you bring him in for that? It makes no sense to wait. When we're talking about, we talked about strength of schedule for the month of December, what it looks like. The Red Wings are going to have a couple of tough games to play in December. Another reason they need Quinn Hughes, because you're coming up against you got a couple softballs going to get thrown your way, but you got a couple of tough ones. And the fact of the matter is, we can't really afford to lose any more points. We've got to make up the points that we lost during that little slump in order to put us really back up there in the top 3.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, a lot of people, this is what a lot of people are going to say. A lot of people are going to be like, oh my God, we don't know this team until March, but we've said it for the reality of the situation is December and November are the months that cost Detroit the most. And we've said it the last 2 years on the podcast. I don't know if they can really come back from this total collapse in November, December. That's what we have said on the podcast. So here's the thing. When we do the outlook for Detroit, and we do, obviously they're on the Western Canada trip. They're going to play Vancouver tonight. So it's on a Thursday. We're recording on a Monday. They're going to play Calgary. They're going to play Calgary on the 10th, which is Wednesday. Then they'll play Edmonton Thursday, and then they'll play Chicago to end their road trip on Saturday, and then they'll play. I think the 16th is a Tuesday, so they'll play their first home game will be against the Islanders on the 16th of December. So this stretch here coming up is very tough. I mean, you got the Canucks, you got the Flames, you got the Edmonton Oilers, and it's not because of the teams you're playing, because the teams you're playing are at the bottom of the league. The Flames are at the bottom of the league, and the Canucks are at the bottom of the league. The Oilers are the team that you're going to have to worry about. But look, the Red Wings have played pretty consistent. If they can consistently get more consistent, they'll be in a better situation. And the toughest team that they will play is Edmonton. That's it in this road trip. So they played Seattle. Seattle was seventh in the after they were seventh in the wild card rank. So they have 20. They're just ahead of Calgary and Vancouver. So look, I think the outlook is crucial here. But here's what I think, Cindy, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. I could see a scenario where the Red Wings do get Quinn Hughes, and I could also see a scenario, and I want your opinion on this because I think we're heading towards it, and a lot of fans don't understand it. We are heading towards Sebastian Cossa coming up to the Detroit Red Wings, and I'm convinced of that. I watched him at Grand Rapids a couple days ago. He was playing out of his mind. Grand Rapids is playing out of their mind, and I think what you're going to see is at the end of the year. So at the end of the year, I do think they're going to bring him up earlier. But at the end of the year, I think they're going to get Trey Augustine to Grand Rapids. So they would really just trade one goalie for another. That's the depth that the Detroit Red Wings organization has right now. But I think Sebastian Cossa gives this team the best chance to win. And if they did get a Quinn Hughes, and then they said, okay, we need to upgrade our goaltending, they don't have to trade for a goaltender. It's in-house. So I think this is one of the most amazing things about what the Red Wings have been able to do. And I think a lot of people that, over the years have been talking about how the Yzer plan has been slowed or whatever the case may be. You might be reaping the benefits really soon because I think this thing is going to pop off pretty soon.
Well, here's the thing. It's just like I said earlier. So they're going to need the goaltending they have right now is inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
Sebastian Cossa has been very consistent in Grand Rapids. However, when they bring Sebastian Cossa up, when they've tried to bring him on to the big ice, what they find is that I think he lacks a little confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So having a guy like Quinn Hughes, solid as all get out, in the D zone to help defend the net for Sebastian Cossa, that gives him a level of confidence and a level of security that isn't there right now. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. So I think that bringing Quinn Hughes probably is another factor in that, is providing another level of comfort and security for Sebastian Cossa to come up and know that he's got solid D that he can rely on, that it's not all on him. There's not so much pressure, because I think what happens is he feels the pressure because we've always, until you really got the Sider Edvinson team, until those two got together and really started humming, okay, we've been very leaky on the blue line, and we've been very, very, Sider's been out there doing it all on his own. Now you bring in some real solid defensemen, someone who's Larry Murphy quality, or somebody who's Hall of Fame worthy, like Quinn Hughes. that gives an awful lot of confidence and an awful lot of security for a young goalie like Sebastian Cossa to come in and have that pressure taken off of him so that he can just concentrate on doing what he does best. So there's no doubt there's a ton of reasons why they're looking at Quinn Hughes in the first place, and I would be willing to bet you a nickel to a donut that that's one of them.
Yeah, I look at what I just had Sebastian Cossa's stats up there. He is 156 goals against average. He's played in 11 games, 17 goals against, which is phenomenal. His goals, his save percentage is 943, which is great. That's best out of all of them, and he's got the most wins. And look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it by saying that Sebastian Cossa is he will be the savior or whatever the case may be. But I will tell you, it would be a lot better than the goaltending that you're getting right now. And I think that Yzerman is going to hit a point where he says, "Screw this! I'm doing this right now, and I'm making the move." Whether it's Sebastian Cossa first and then Quinn Hughes to add a cherry on top, whether it's Quinn Hughes first or Sebastian Cossa second, like I think Yzerman is going to be Yzerman has to know, and I know you understand this, Cindy. He knows that he has something brewing right now. Like he has something going right now that he really he could be proud of, because this is what he's put his fruits of his labor are going to start to percolate. And he hasn't really put together it all in the same basket, but I have a feeling by March this team will be drastically different. That's my opinion on the matter. And I think that you're going to hit this point where they're going to make a big move, especially if they get Quinn Hughes or they bring up Cossa first, whatever the case may be. I think that they're going to be heading towards this decision really quickly.
Well, and don't discount the influence that a couple former Red Wings who've come on in the last year or two back into the fold with Steve, don't underestimate the amount of confidence they're giving him and the input they're giving him. You had Nick Lindstrom come back into the fold. You've got Sergei Fedorov, who's a lot more involved than he was before. And now there's going to be some patching up of that situation there, and don't be surprised if you see Sergei Fedorov's influence coming through. I think you're going to see a lot of that. So Steve's getting the band back together, and he's looking to build a new band at the same time. And I think that all of those elements are going to come together and create a significant contender for the postseason.
Yeah, I think that's where we're heading, and I think it's just hitting the right way. That's my opinion. Like this whole thing is heading the right direction. I think Yzerman firmly believes he has a coach to lead this team. I think Larkin has shown that he is a guy that you can count on. And Ken Daniels had this fascinating stat during the Seattle game where he said that without Larkin on the ice, the team is minus 23 in goal differential. So for all you little weirdos that don't like Larkin, there's a stat to put you in the right direction, because that's the facts. That is the facts of the matter. So I think this team is heading towards the right direction. I think if they make the deal for Quinn Hughes, which is heavily speculated between Elliotte, Friedman, all the guys, this is a huge thing for the Red Wings. And I think not just that, but I think that they have help coming on the farm with Sebastian Cossa. And it's interesting, Cindy, because in Grand Rapids, they have 4 goaltenders. How many times have you seen a team carry 4 goaltenders, especially in AHL? It doesn't really happen often. Doesn't happen often. So you could potentially, and the guy that they have in Grand Rapids is a veteran goaltender, Dustin Tokarski. Michael Pastava played in the Czechoslovakian league, and then obviously you got your prospect Carter Gylander, and they could potentially have a guy like Trey Augustine come there. So a lot of moving parts I think will happen in the next couple weeks. I think me and you stand on this, Cindy, where there's going to be moving parts all over the place. So if you stick with Red Alert podcast, you'll be really heading in the right direction. And we took a 2 week break because not a 2 week break. We had things going on. This usually happens in November for whatever case, like November, especially when Cindy's dealing with an election, because she's a big shot. We have some things. So it usually happens in November where we kind of get thrown off, but we're back on track. We'll be here next week. And if there's a trade that happens in the meantime, we will definitely be on, whether it's
You
on the
betcha.
YouTube channel or whether it's on whatever the case may be. We will be talking Red Wings for the rest of the season, and this is going to be a great end of the season. I think we're about to get some good. I think the Red Wings fans are going to get a blockbuster trade, and then they're going to get the rookie goaltender Cossa coming up. I think it's going to be a fantastic time because I think this team is heading in the right direction. They just need a little bit more help, and if Quinn Hughes comes, boy, oh boy, this is going to be popping off like crazy.
I think the Red Wings future, Joe, is brighter than the lights on my Christmas tree, and Quinn Hughes would be the star on top.
Oh, what a great Christmas wish. We went earlier in the podcast. We talked about the blue Christmas. That would be nice to have a star on top like Quinn Hughes, because that would be a perfect gift to get. If you're a Red Wings fan, you'd be like, I'll take that gift no matter what. But
That's right. I'll take it.
But they say, Cindy, that sometimes good things happen to those who wait. Maybe we have to wait a little bit longer, but maybe it's like that kid that gets the Mercedes, those Mercedes commercials, those weird ass commercials where the kid gets a Mercedes for his 16th birthday present. It's like, what kind of family is this? Like, what kind of family is this where the kid's getting a 16th birthday present as a Mercedes? Like, first of all, I know Jeff would not condone a Mercedes because he doesn't want to fix that Mercedes, but
No, he likes the BMWs,
All right, we'll go to BMW. Yeah, he does not want to fix the Mercedes. So we will see you guys on the next Red Alert podcast here on J Sports Detroit and on the Red Alert podcast YouTube channel. Now we are going to be doing a whole thing to get us to 1,000 subscribers on the Red Alert podcast YouTube page. So we will be doing that pretty soon. Stay tuned to that. We will be maybe having a giveaway of some sort just to drive 1,000 people to the YouTube so we can build that, and then we can give you the content you deserve, which will be great. We will see you in the next podcast. And as always, go to Red Alert on Facebook, and then we might do a Twitter maybe just to get it out there, but we might do the Twitter. We have an Instagram, so stay tuned for that. Cindy will, she might do some like little things. We don't know, but we'll see you guys in the next podcast. We talk more Detroit Red Wings hockey here on the Red Alert podcast.
See you then.